Imagine yourself suspended in the thin, freezing air. October 14th, 1943, 27,000 feet above Schweinfurt, Germany. The sky is a battlefield. There, Captain Don Blakesley, commander of the 4th Fighter Group, steadies his P-47 Thunderbolt, eyes narrowed as he searches the chaos ahead. Dear friends, if this video has reached you, it's not by chance. Right now, click the subscribe button and the notification bell. Write a number from 1 to 5 in the comments. I will personally respond to the first 50 comments and make sure to watch the video until the end. Beneath his wings, 316 B-17 flying fortresses push stubbornly toward their target at the ball-bearing factories that kept Germany's war machine alive. And circling them, like predators sensing weakness, more than 300 Luftwaffe fighters carve mercilessly into the bomber formations. Now picture Blakesley glancing at his fuel gauge. 20 minutes left before he must turn for home. 20 minutes of protection for bombers that require 3 more hours to limp back to England. Could there be a crueler calculation? The truth was harsh. The P-47 Thunderbolt, America's starfighter, had the range of a short-legged sprinter. It could escort the bombers only 250 miles into Germany. Then it had no choice but to leave them behind. And once abandoned, the bombers flying deeper into enemy territory were forced to face the Luftwaffe alone. On this day, the cost would be staggering. 60 B-17s and 600 men lost before the mission ended. So when Blakesley finally issued the reluctant command to turn back, leaving the bombers to confront 200 miles of German fighters without him, he sent a transmission that would echo like a thunderclap through 8th Air Force headquarters. We need a fighter that can go all the way to Berlin and back. Until we get one, we're sending these bomber boys to die. What Blakesley could not have known was that such a fighter already existed. Not in a secret laboratory, not in a restricted hangar guarded by military police, but sitting overlooked and unwanted in a hangar at Wright Field, Ohio. An airplane the Army Air Forces had dismissed as inadequate. A machine official tests had labeled inferior to America's existing fighters. By all bureaucratic logic, it should have been scrapped and forgotten. Yet 5 months earlier, in a modest Rolls-Royce workshop in England, a mechanic named Ronald Harker had broken rules that were not meant to be broken. Without authorization, he had taken an American fighter aloft, sensed possibilities that professional pilots had somehow overlooked, and written a report that contradicted the official verdict. He violated protocol, bypassed the chain of command, defied proper procedure. His recommendations weren't just unwelcome, they were technically illegal. After all, he had no authority to propose modifications to a foreign nation's aircraft. But Harker had seen what procurement officers, fighter pilots, and planners had failed to see. That the P-51 Mustang, dismissed as a mediocre, low-altitude fighter, could become the greatest air superiority weapon of World War II with one elegant change: swap its American Allison engine for the British Rolls-Royce Merlin. That single substitution would reshape the war in the skies. And to understand how this forgotten fighter came to be, we must rewind the story 2 years, back to 1941. North American Aviation received an unusual and urgent request from the British Purchasing Commission. Britain, standing alone against Nazi Germany, was desperate for fighters. The Supermarine Spitfire, though outstanding, couldn't be built quickly enough. The Hurricane was already slipping into obsolescence. So Britain turned to American industry with a plea it needed a new fighter, needed it fast, and North American was asked to deliver. Imagine standing beside a group of British procurement officers in the early days of the war, pressed for time, anxious, desperate for capable fighters. Now, picture their surprise when North American Aviation responds to their proposal with a boldness that bordered on sheer audacity. The British had merely suggested license producing the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk. Yet James "Dutch" Kindleberger, the charismatic and confident president of North American, effectively told them, "Give us the time you'd need to set up P-40 production, and we'll design and build something far superior from scratch." Can you imagine the silence that followed? A mix of skepticism and hope. The British finally agreed 120 days. Just 120 days to conjure a prototype out of thin air. And then the miracle began. Under the leadership of Chief Engineer Edgar Schmood, North American's design team forged ahead, and what emerged was the NA-73, soon to be christened by the British with a name that would echo through aviation history: the Mustang. Everything about this aircraft seemed to break with convention. Its laminar flow wing, developed by Nassier, sliced through the air with dramatically reduced drag. Its radiator, tucked behind the pilot, used the Meredith effect, a brilliant concept where cooling airflow didn't create drag, but actually generated thrust. Even the fuselage took shape not by the old-school eyeballing method, but through precise mathematical calculation, giving it unmatched aerodynamic purity. And as if that weren't enough, the structure was built using automotive mass production techniques, allowing for breathtaking manufacturing speed. Now imagine the tension in the air on October 26, 1940, as the prototype lifted off for the very first time, just 117 days after development began, beating the already improbable deadline by 3 full days, and the aircraft delivered. In those initial test flights, the Mustang proved fast at low altitude, capable of 380 miles at 15,000 feet. Pilots praised its agility. They admired the way it responded, almost as if it anticipated their thoughts. Its range, supported by 184 gallons of internal fuel and the option for external drop tanks, surpassed that of any single-engine fighter of its era. The British didn't hesitate. Orders were placed immediately, and by mid-1941, the Royal Air Force was receiving its first Mustang Mark I fighters. But then came the devastating realization, the kind that throws open a trapdoor beneath an aircraft's legacy. The Allison V1710 engine, competent at low and medium altitudes, faltered disastrously above 15,000 feet. Its single-stage, single-speed supercharger simply couldn't cope with thinning air. At 25,000 feet, the altitude where modern air combat truly unfolded, the Mustang's performance collapsed. Speed dipped below 300 mph. The climb rate withered. Maneuverability eroded as the engine gasped for oxygen. German fighters, operating comfortably between 25,000 and 30,000 feet, could swoop down on Allison-powered Mustangs, strike with near impunity, and climb away with ease, leaving the Mustang powerless to pursue. The RAF quickly acknowledged the flaw and confined the aircraft to low-altitude tactical reconnaissance and ground attack missions, where the Allison engine behaved adequately. The U.S. Army Air Forces reached the same bleak conclusion. Though they admired the Mustang's range and superb low-altitude handling, they rejected it for high-altitude air superiority roles. Their official evaluation said it plainly. The NA-73 excelled below 15,000 feet, but its performance above that point disqualified it from escort or interceptor missions against European fighters operating at 25,000 feet and higher. The recommendation? Limited use for ground attack and reconnaissance only. By mid-1942, the Mustang seemed destined to fade into obscurity, a promising machine crippled by its power plant, relegated to supporting roles, while North American shifted its hopes toward other designs like the B-25 Mitchell bomber. And then came April 30th, 1943, a day that would quietly, unexpectedly, alter the course of aviation history. It began with a man who wasn't even a fighter pilot. Ronald Harker, a 30-year-old Rolls-Royce test pilot and engine specialist based at Hucknall, spent his days evaluating engines and relaying insights to engineers. He held no authority to assess American fighters or recommend modifications to foreign aircraft. Yet fate, or perhaps curiosity, placed him at RAF Duxford on that pivotal day, observing Mustang Mark Is in their reconnaissance role. During a casual conversation, the squadron commander remarked that the Mustang was magnificent below 15,000 feet, but practically useless above it. Then, almost as an afterthought, he offered Harker a chance to fly one. Perhaps he expected a simple confirmation of the Mustang's limitations. Harker accepted. He climbed into the cockpit, intending only a short familiarization flight. But once airborne, something profound happened. He felt the aircraft respond with extraordinary harmony. The airframe light, sleek, astonishingly efficient. The aerodynamics near perfection. The handling so smooth it bordered on elegant. Everything about the Mustang felt right, except the engine. And Harker, with his intimate knowledge of the Rolls-Royce Merlin, the powerhouse of Spitfires, Hurricanes, Mosquitoes, and Lancasters, immediately understood the implications. The Mustang didn't need a redesign. It didn't need a miracle. It needed a Merlin. Picture the scene. A mechanical heart built for the heavens, a two-stage, two-speed supercharger pushing an engine to breathe powerfully at 30,000 feet and even higher. While the Allison engine wheezed and faded at 25,000 feet, the Rolls-Royce Merlin was only beginning to show its strength. At that altitude, the Merlin delivered roughly 1,420 horsepower, towering over the Allison's meager 1,000 horsepower. As Ronald Harker guided the Mustang back toward Duxford, an audacious thought began to crystallize in his mind. What if this superb airframe, this sleek, agile Mustang, were paired with the high-altitude might of the Merlin? What if you could merge long-range and low-altitude speed with the kind of performance usually reserved for the thin, icy edges of the stratosphere? Imagine the fusion, the strengths of two machines becoming something greater than either alone. Once on the ground, Harker crossed a line that most mechanics would never dare approach. Without approval from Rolls-Royce management, without the blessing of RAF command, without the slightest nod from American authorities, he drafted a detailed report arguing that the Mustang should be fitted with the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. His document, dated May 3, 1943, declared, "The Mustang airframe is superior to any fighter currently in production. Its only limitation is the Allison engine's altitude performance. Installation of the Merlin engine would create an aircraft combining the Mustang's range and handling with the Merlin's high-altitude power. The resulting fighter would exceed the performance of any aircraft currently operational. I strongly recommend immediate testing of this configuration." The report was sent to Air Vice Marshal Sir Wilfrid Freeman, who immediately grasped its significance. Freeman possessed the authority to move the proposal forward, but one enormous problem stood in his way. The Americans had already tested the Mustang and discarded it, implying they were mistaken could strain already delicate relations. Moreover, he technically had no authority over U.S. aircraft procurement. But Freeman understood a simple truth. Winning the war outweighed polite diplomacy. He forwarded Harker's assessment to the Ministry of Aircraft Production with a striking note. "This may be the most important recommendation to cross my desk this year. We should pursue it regardless of diplomatic complications." What neither Freeman nor Harker realized was that on the other side of the Atlantic, similar thoughts had already begun to stir. At Packard Motor Company, the American licensee producing the Merlin, engineers were quietly contemplating the same pairing. And in the shadows of right field, a few persistent U.S. engineers had advocated for months that the Mustang-Merlin combination was the key only to be shut down by layers of procurement red tape. The idea itself wasn't entirely new. A handful of engineers had mentioned it informally, but official channels rejected it for reasons that, individually, seemed reasonable. Yet together created a perfect storm of missed opportunity. First, the Allison was an American engine. the Merlin British. Industrial policy and national pride favored American components in American aircraft. Second, Britain already struggled to produce enough Merlins for its own machines, Spitfires, Lancasters. Redirecting engines to an American fighter meant reducing British output. Third, re-engineering an existing airframe for an entirely different power plant required time, manpower, and money. Why refit a design that the Americans themselves had dismissed? Fourth, and most obstructive, procurement had already committed to the P-47 Thunderbolt and P-38 Lightning for escort roles. Admitting the Mustang was a better solution meant admitting earlier decisions might have been flawed, something bureaucracies rarely embrace. But by spring 1943, the bomber crisis had grown impossible to ignore. Deep raids into Germany were bleeding the 8th Air Force. The P-47, formidable in combat, simply could not reach far enough. The P-38 had the range, but its mechanical issues in European conditions made it unreliable. Neither could escort bombers to the distant targets that mattered most. So the crisis demanded an answer, and Harker's report offered one. Freeman reached out to the U.S. Army Air Forces through official diplomatic channels, suggesting that testing a Merlin-powered Mustang might prove worthwhile. The American reply, dated May 22nd, was cold at best. The RAF's suggestion regarding Merlin installation in the P-51 is noted. However, we have already committed to the P-47 and P-38 for escort duties. Modifying an aircraft already rejected as unsuitable for high-altitude work seems inefficient. Allocation of engineering resources. But Freeman had one final card to play. Without waiting for American permission, Rolls-Royce engineers at Hucknall had already begun the conversion in secret. They pulled the Allison engine out of Mustang Mark IV, L975, and installed a Merlin 61 in act that, from a bureaucratic perspective, bordered on grand larceny. The aircraft belonged to the RAF under Lend-Lease. Modifying it without notifying the manufacturer or the supplying government violated every rule in the book. Yet Freeman had given quiet, unofficial approval, and so the work continued. The conversion was no simple swap. The Merlin, larger and more powerful, required new engine mounts, redesigned cowling, altered cooling arrangements, a different propeller, and adjustments to the fuel system. After 4 months of labor, the transformed aircraft, now designated Mustang Mark X, took to the sky for the first time on October 13, 1943. Test pilot Ronald Harker climbed to 25,000 feet and opened the throttle. What he discovered surpassed even his boldest expectations. At that altitude, the Merlin Mustang hit 430 meters, a full 70 mph faster than the Allison-powered model. Its climb rate was astonishing. Its handling remained superb. And crucially, its range, already remarkable, was unchanged. The Merlin drank fuel at roughly the same rate as the Allison. The Mustang's extraordinary reach had survived the transformation intact. In his test report, dated October 15th, Harker wrote, "The Merlin Mustang is the finest fighter aircraft I have ever flown at any altitude. Performance exceeds the Spitfire Mark IX above 20,000 feet, while maintaining a range advantage of over 200%. This aircraft should be put into production immediately." Within days, RAF pilots were taking their own turns at the controls, and their conclusions echoed Harker's. Squadron leader Michael Robinson, a seasoned combat pilot with 12 victories, reported, "I have flown Spitfires, Hurricanes, and Thunderbolts in combat. The Merlin Mustang is superior to all of them above 15,000 feet and equal below. Most importantly, its range is triple the Spitfire. This is the bomber escort fighter we've been waiting for." Before we continue with how this rule-breaking experiment reshaped the air war over Europe, imagine this. If you find stories of unauthorized innovation and bureaucratic defiance compelling, consider subscribing to our channel and activating the notification bell. we craft deeply researched military histories that reveal the human decisions behind breakthrough technologies. Your support helps us keep bringing these detailed narratives to life. Now imagine the moment when the United States finally grasped what one mechanic's unauthorized leap of intuition had already demonstrated in the skies over England. This was the American awakening, sudden, undeniable, and transformative. By November 1943, British test reports on the Merlin-powered Mustang could no longer be brushed aside. They landed on the desks of American commanders like thunderclaps. And among those reading the numbers was General Henry Hap Arnold, head of the Army Air Forces, a man who recognized a revolution when he saw one. Picture him scanning performance evaluations that surpassed anything America had yet produced. More than 2,000 miles of range with drop tanks, 440 mounted tortiums at 25,000 feet, and a service ceiling soaring to 41,000 feet. These weren't optimistic predictions. They were verified results from an aircraft already flying. Arnold's reaction was instant. On November 8th, he issued a directive that left no room for hesitation. North American Aviation was to convert 2 P-51s to Merlin power immediately, test them comprehensively, and send the findings straight to his desk. But North American was already far ahead of him. While Rolls-Royce engineers had been secretly modifying Mustangs in England, North American's own team, led once again by Edgar Schmued, had been quietly collaborating with Packard, the American company producing licensed Merlins for British aircraft. Schmued had never believed the Allison was the final answer. From the very beginning, he had built enough internal space into the Mustang to accommodate future engines, anticipating exactly this moment. So when Packard delivered samples of their Merlin production in the summer of 1943, he immediately began designing the conversion. The Packard-built Merlin V1650, virtually identical to the Rolls-Royce original, but crafted with American tooling and processes, was already rolling off assembly lines by the thousands. That solved the very supply bottleneck that had once made the swap seem impossible. In November 1943, North American completed 2 prototype conversions, designated NA-102 and NA-123. On November 30th, company test pilot Robert Chilton took the first American-built Merlin Mustang into the air. His evaluation matched British results, point for point. The aircraft was superb, an all-altitude performer, with capabilities eclipsing every American fighter in the sky or even on the drawing board. Wright Field received the prototypes in early December for official trials. The very engineers who had previously dismissed the Mustang now confronted data they simply could not refute. At 25,000 feet, the Merlin Mustang outpaced the P-47 Thunderbolt by 40 mph and the P-38 Lightning by 55 mph. It outclimbed them at every altitude above 15,000 feet. And in terms of range, before a single drop tank was considered, it could fly 850 miles. The P-47 managed 475, the P-38, 525. But the most astonishing number was the combat radius, the key measure for bomber escort. The P-47 could escort bombers roughly 250 miles into Germany, enough to reach the Ruhr, but far short of Berlin. The P-38 could push to about 300 miles. The Merlin Mustang, now designated the P-51B, could go 650 miles on internal fuel alone. Add 2 75-gallon drop tanks, and that radius leapt to 800 miles. And Berlin lay 550 miles from England. Suddenly, American bombers could be escorted all the way to Berlin and back, with Mustang pilots still having enough fuel left to fight. On December 20th, 1943, General Arnold ordered immediate, full-scale production. Every available P-51 airframe would receive the Merlin engine. Allison production would cease. Factories in Inglewood, California would turn out P-51Bs, while a new plant in Dallas, Texas would build the identical P-51C. By spring of 1944, output would surpass 400 aircraft per month. The game changer had arrived. The first P-51B Mustangs reached England in December 1943, assigned to the 354th Fighter Group, the Pioneer Mustang Group. Pilots accustomed to the massive P-47 Thunderbolt eyed the smaller, sleeker Mustang with skepticism. One engine instead of two like the P-38, 6 50 caliber machine guns instead of 8. Could this slender newcomer really replace their trusted mounts? Their doubts evaporated on December 5, 1943. On that day's mission, an escort operation to Amiens, France. The Mustang showed its true nature. It climbed past 25,000 feet faster than the bombers it guarded. It cruised at such efficient speeds that pilots could weave protectively across the bomber stream without burning excessive fuel. And when German fighters appeared, the Mustangs dove with a ferocity the Luftwaffe had never witnessed from American aircraft. Lieutenant Charles Gumm, flying his very first Mustang mission, confronted two FW-190s diving on the bombers. From 28,000 feet, he plunged toward them, surpassing 500 mph. The Germans, seeing a U.S. fighter streaking down at such speed, assumed it was a P-47 and predicted it would zoom skyward again after a single pass. Instead, Gumm stuck with them, through turns, climbs, and evasive rolls, matching them move for move. He shot down both FW-190s and returned to bomber altitude with fuel still in reserve. His combat report said it plainly. The P-51 does everything the P-47 does, plus it stays with the bombers all the way home. This changes everything. By January 1944, more fighter groups were converting to the Mustang. The 357th arrived in February. The 4th Fighter Group, led by Don Blakesley, who had pleaded for long-range escorts after Schweinfurt transitioned in March, and every unit discovered the same revelation. The Mustang wasn't just better in a few areas, it was better in nearly all of them. The kill-to-loss ratios spoke for themselves. In January and February 1944, P-51 units achieved an 11.1 kill ratio against German fighters. P-47 units averaged 7.1. The P-38 managed 5.1. The Mustang's synthesis of speed, range, agility, and altitude performance was overwhelming. Luftwaffe pilots who had learned to counter Thunderbolts and Lightnings found the P-51 an entirely different beast. Major Günther Rahl, a Luftwaffe ace with more than 200 victories, mostly on the Eastern Front, encountered the P-51 in March 1944. His after-action description was stark. The new American fighter is superior to our aircraft in almost every performance category. It is faster, climbs better, has superior range, and handles exceptionally. Our only advantages are armament. Our 20mm and 30mm cannon are more destructive in experience. But these advantages are shrinking as their pilot quality increases, and our experienced pilots are lost faster than we can replace them. Then came the strategic impact, immense, unmistakable, decisive. Before the Mustang, daylight bombing deep into Germany was a deadly gamble. Bomber losses of 5 to 10% per mission were normal. At that rate, a crew faced near certain death or capture long before finishing their 25-mission tour. The entire daylight bombing campaign teetered on the brink of collapse. And then the Mustang arrived, escorting bombers to the target and all the way home. Imagine watching the tide of war shift in real time. After the Mustang entered the fight, bomber losses plunged with breathtaking speed. When American bombers struck Berlin for the first time in March 1944, losses stayed below 4%, even though they faced the most seasoned units the Luftwaffe could muster. The uninterrupted presence of Mustangs stalking the enemy from takeoff to return prevented the massed assaults that had once torn unescorted bombers apart. But the Mustang wasn't just a shield. It transformed the very philosophy of air combat. In January 1944, General James Doolittle, commander of the 8th Air Force, issued a directive that rewrote the playbook. Up to that point, fighters hovered protectively near bomber formations, reacting only when German aircraft attacked. Doolittle's new order flipped that logic. Destroy the German Air Force wherever you find it, in the air or on the ground. And thanks to the Mustang's extraordinary range, this was finally possible. Fighter groups could surge ahead of the bombers, sweeping German skies clean before enemy formations could assemble. They could pursue isolated German fighters without fear of running out of fuel. Increasingly, they could dive on Luftwaffe airfields, ripping apart aircraft still sitting vulnerable on the ground. The German response revealed just how profoundly the Mustang had changed the battlefield. Luftwaffe tactical orders from spring 1944 reflect rising alarm. A directive dated March 28 warned. American fighters with very long range, identified as P-51 Mustang, are now accompanying bomber formations throughout their missions. These fighters are superior to our Bf-109G and FW-190A models, above 6,000 meters. Pilots are instructed to avoid extended combat with P-51s if possible. Attack bombers quickly, then disengage before escorts can respond. But escaping a Mustang was far easier written than achieved. The German fighters held only a slight advantage in pure diving speed, and even that edge was slim. In climbs, turns, roll response, and acceleration, the Mustang equaled or outperformed its rivals. Luftwaffe pilots realized that attacking bombers meant fighting through a wall of Mustangs, and fighting Mustangs usually meant defeat. The numbers from spring and summer 1944 tell the story with brutal clarity. March, 8th Air Force lost 131 bombers. April, 70. May, 61. June, 42. The downward trend matched the rising number of P-51s entering service. As more groups converted to the Mustang, bomber losses fell, while American fighter victories soared. The Luftwaffe was being slowly crushed in a war of attrition it could not hope to win. American factories produced fighters faster than Germany could replace its losses. American training schools graduated pilots at rates Germany couldn't match. And as U.S. flyers gained experience, German veterans were steadily being killed. By the time of the D-Day invasion in June 1944, Allied air superiority was so absolute that German fighters were nearly absent from the skies. The Luftwaffe managed only 319 sorties on June 6th, while the Allies flew over 14,000. Mustangs, gliding above the invasion beaches, ensured German aircraft rarely penetrated the Allied shield in meaningful numbers. By late summer 1944, the Luftwaffe's daylight fighter arm was effectively shattered. It still launched missions, still scored the occasional tactical victory, but strategically, it was finished. It could no longer shield German cities from daytime bombing, could not meaningfully support ground troops, and could not replace pilots and aircraft fast enough to remain viable. And the fighter that procurement officials had once written off as inadequate became the very machine that secured air supremacy over Europe. The Aces and their Mustang. The P-51 Mustang quickly became the favorite mount of America's most successful fighter pilots. Major George Preddy, with 26.83 kills, became the top Mustang ace. Major John Meyer scored 24 victories in P-51s. Colonel Francis Gabreski, already an ace in P-47s, added 6.5 more in Mustangs. Captain Chuck Yeager, later known for breaking the sound barrier, notched 11.5 victories in P-51s, including 5 in a single day, October 12, 1944. Pilots adored the Mustang for reasons that transcended charts and tables. The bubble canopy offered stunning 360-degree visibility. The controls felt light, responsive, almost intuitive. It was steady as a gun platform, agile in combat, and forgiving enough to survive mistakes that would have doomed pilots flying less stable aircraft. Just weeks before his death in December 1944, Major Preddy spoke of what made the Mustang special. "It does everything well. It's fast, climbs well, turns tight, has range for hours. But what makes it special is how it combines all these qualities. Other fighters might match it in one area, but the Mustang is competitive in every area. You can't trap a Mustang pilot if he's competent. He can always extend and escape if the fight turns bad, then come back when he has advantage. That versatility is what makes it deadly. Reliability was another quiet strength often overlooked in performance debates. The Packard-built Merlin engine proved strong and maintainable. The airframe was rugged, capable of returning pilots to base, even with damage that would have doomed other aircraft. Systems were redundant where possible, meaning that single failures rarely resulted in catastrophe. Captain Donald Lopez, who flew 70 missions in Mustangs, recalled returning home with 67 holes in his aircraft. One aileron torn, the rudder damaged. "The plane flew like it was angry," he said. "But it flew. Any other fighter would have been uncontrollable with that damage. The Mustang just shrugged it off and brought me home." The evolution of the Mustang reached its next great turning point with the arrival of the P-51D, a model that rolled into production in March 1944. Imagine standing beside the assembly line as the first D models gleamed beneath the factory lights, recognizable, yet unmistakably transformed. The most striking improvement was the new bubble canopy, replacing the earlier framed design. Suddenly, pilots could see in every direction, as though someone had lifted a blindfold from the cockpit. Armament increased from 4 to 6 50 caliber machine guns, and an upgraded gun sight sharpened accuracy. Aerodynamic refinements nudged the top speed to 447 km/h at 25,000 feet. The P-51D became the Mustang, the definitive variant, 9,123 of them produced. By autumn 1944, it equipped most fighter groups of the 8th and 9th Air Forces, dominating the European sky during the war's closing months. The final major development, the P-51H, embodied everything learned from years of air combat. Engineers trimmed weight with thinner wing skins and a lighter structure. The power plant was upgraded to the Packard Merlin Phi 1659, a beast producing 1,900 horsepower with water injection. The result? A top speed of 487 km/h, making the H model the fastest production Mustang ever built. But fate intervened. Production only began in February 1945. A mere 5 Fi-5 were completed before the war ended, and most never fired a shot in combat. Thus, it was the P-51D that carried the burden of victory. Its performance remained formidable enough to counter even the Me-262 jet fighter. Under ideal conditions, the Me-262 could outrun and outgun almost anything, but it had a fatal weakness during takeoff and landing. Mustang pilots adapted quickly. They circled German jet bases like hawks waiting for prey, striking Me-262s in those vulnerable moments when the jet's speed advantage meant nothing. In the cold calculus of war, the Mustang neutralized the jet threat, not through chasing speed, but through strategy and timing. The numbers themselves reveal the scale of the Mustang's dominance. Total production reached 15,75 aircraft across all versions. Roughly 8,000 of those were P-51Ds. In March 1945, production peaked at a staggering 550 Mustangs per month. For comparison, the P-47 Thunderbolt totaled 15,683 units, and the P-38 Lightning 10,037. Remarkably, the Mustang nearly matched the Thunderbolt's output, despite entering large-scale production 2 years later. And the combat record? Equally astonishing. P-51 units claimed 4,050 enemy aircraft destroyed in air-to-air combat, and roughly another 4,000 on the ground during strafing operations. Nearly 9,000 enemy aircraft fell to the Mustang more than to any other American fighter type. Loss rates told another story about survivability. Of 15,575 Mustangs built, about 2,820 were lost in combat, 16.2%. By comparison, The P-47 lost 3,057 of 15,683, 22.9%, and the P-38 lost 1,758 of 10,037, 17.5%. The Mustang's lower loss rate reflected not only German decline, but also the aircraft's ability to bring its pilots home, despite flak, fighters, and battle damage. The Mustang's story didn't end in 1945. Far from it. It returned to combat during the Korean War, excelling in ground attack missions. Air forces around the world continued flying Mustangs throughout the 1950s and even the 1960s. Some nations kept them operational into the 1980s for specialized roles. Today, more than 150 Mustangs still fly thrilling airshow crowds with the unmistakable growl of a Merlin engine and the swooping grace of Edgar Schmood's timeless design. Yet the Mustang's deepest legacy lies not in raw numbers or wartime statistics, but in what it symbolizes: the seamless fusion of British and American engineering, the decisive importance of long-range escort fighters, and above all, the triumph of innovation over bureaucracy. Ronald Harker's unauthorized test flight in April 1943, committed by a man with no authority to evaluate or modify foreign aircraft, broke rules, violated protocol, and risked his entire career. And yet, that single act of technical insight helped create the fighter that achieved air superiority over Europe. There is a lesson here that transcends aviation. Sometimes breakthroughs emerge from people who are willing to question the system, to challenge accepted limitations, to push beyond the boundaries of what the rulebook says is possible. Bureaucratic dismissal does not always mean an idea is wrong. The Mustang became living proof that combining existing technologies in a new way can produce revolutionary results. One person, one willing to challenge convention, can alter the course of history. The P-51 Mustang, conceived in 120 frantic days, initially rejected, and ultimately redeemed by a mechanic's forbidden test flight, became America's deadliest fighter. It shot down more enemy aircraft than any other U.S. fighter, made deep penetration bombing feasible, and provided the long-range escort capability the Allies had desperately needed. In doing so, it helped secure the air superiority without which D-Day would have been impossible and Germany's defeat unattainable. Consider Don Blakesley, the man who had begged for long-range escorts after watching bombers fall over Schweinfurt. He led the 4th Fighter Group in Mustangs to the war's end. His personal tally reached 151 victories, but his greater achievement was guiding his group to over 580 enemy aircraft, destroyed the highest-scoring group in the 8th Air Force. When asked after the war about the Mustang's impact, Blakesley spoke with the clarity of a man who had lived the transformation. "We had courage, we had numbers, we had industrial capacity, but we didn't have the tool until the Mustang arrived. Once we got it, everything changed. We went from barely surviving to dominating the sky." The Mustang didn't just protect bombers, it hunted German fighters. It was the fighter we needed, delivered just in time to matter. Think about that. A shift from near defeat to overwhelming superiority in less than a year. From Harker's unauthorized flight in April 1943 to Mustangs ruling German airspace in the spring of 1944 passed only 12 months. In that brief span, an outlaw idea became accepted engineering, bureaucratic rejection turned into enthusiastic adoption, and a discarded design became the deadliest fighter in the American arsenal. The Mustang story proves that innovations often rise from those closest to the machinery, not those highest in the hierarchy. It shows that challenging orthodoxy, even at personal risk, can yield results that change nations. And it reminds us that the right tool, arriving at the right moment, can alter the trajectory of history. Franz Weber, the German soldier who survived the flamethrower tank attack at Aachen, later reflected on facing American fighters in early 1945. His words capture the psychological reality of the Mustang's dominance. By then, We knew the war was lost, but the American Mustangs made it obvious. They were everywhere, at all times, at every altitude. They attacked our airfields, strafed our convoys, shot down the few aircraft we had left. The sky belonged to them. When I saw Mustangs overhead, I knew we were witnessing the end of the Luftwaffe. Beautiful aircraft symbols of everything we had lost: technical excellence, industrial capacity, and the ability to innovate faster than we could respond. Today, when a restored P-51 arcs across an airshow sky, its Merlin engine singing a metallic symphony, spectators see more than polished aluminum or wartime heritage. They witness the legacy of Ronald Harker's defiant flight, the vindication of one mechanic's forbidden idea, and the enduring truth that sometimes breaking the rules is not recklessness, but necessity. The P-51 Mustang, born of desperation, dismissed by bureaucracy, rescued by a rule-breaking test pilot, became the fighter that helped win World War II by achieving what experts once deemed impossible, escorting bombers all the way to Berlin and back, while defeating every German fighter bold enough to challenge it. The mechanic was right, the bureaucrats were wrong, and history was rewritten by one unauthorized flight that proved victory sometimes belongs to those willing to defy the rules.